Sovereign Mind Radio, home of Free Fire Media, community radio for the North State, 96.5 FM, 1460 AM, your talk radio. And we're here, and we have our next guest, which is, who is Dr. Laura Hobbs. And I didn't even know she was a doctor till last night. I guess she doesn't advertise the fact, but you actually have a degree in microbiology?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
There you go. All right. So, you learn something new every day, you know. Who knew Trump could sing?
Yeah, that's it. Well, you never know. He might be able to. We don't know that, but that wasn't really
I don't know. You know, this AI thing is spooky stuff because it's like if they're getting to the point where somebody could be doing a speech in front of the White House and you wouldn't even know if they were real or not.
Mm-hmm.
Man, that's kind of freaking scary. Just saying. I don't know.
I've been saying it for a long time. Anyway,
let's get on to our Make Shasta Great Again campaign, and that's your slogan.
Yep.
I like it.
Yeah, I'm completely MAGA. I'm not embarrassed or ashamed of it. I'm proud of it. I love Trump and what he's done for our country. I think the election was stolen from him in 2020, and I plan to vote for him again in 2024.
There you have it.
I have to say, I kind of like that opening statement, you know?
Yeah, I mean, what's there not to like? Because, I mean, I think everybody knows it was stolen. I mean, even the people on the left know it was stolen, that, you know, it's like they know, we know, that they know, that we know they know, you know? Yeah. And now it's like, okay, so now what do we do about it, I guess, is the question. So let's start out with... Yeah,
let's just go down some of the key things that you're putting out there that you want to do or how you feel about certain things. And the first one is, of course, we just spent the last hour talking about fair elections, so let's just go with that one.
Yeah, perfect transition.
There you have it. We need a drum roll.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because last night I attended Dr. Frank's event, and there was a lot of good information there. I got to speak to some other constituents from District 2 because I'm running for Supervisor in District 2. And I asked them, what's the most important thing for you in District 2? And the lady was like, well, fair elections, you know. So a lot of people, they look at the local stuff, but they also look at the broader picture, which is that we don't have adequate representation in this county, at the county level, because of the fact that our elections are being stolen from us.
Do you know what I think just grates me the most in this county, probably the state, the nation, is all the people that say they're conservative Republicans. Now, there's some that are, don't get me wrong, but there's a ton of them that say they're conservative Republicans that never do anything conservative, or I guess the platform of being Republican is supposed to be a person who, you know, thinks the Constitution was a great document written by brilliant men to keep and preserve our freedoms forever. What do you think?
Well, you know, I think that those types of Republicans are being revealed. They can no longer stay in hiding. People are aware of what they're about. Typically, they're called rhinos now, Republican in name only. And we do have some folks like that on our board, and they use the stance that they are fiscally responsible conservative, and that's what the platform that they stand on is, just fiscally conservative. But socially, they're very much liberals. So they...
Okay, when we say fiscally conservative, right now, I don't know what the numbers are, but I think our county's like deep into unfunded liabilities and, you know, the CalPERS system, and we've got the defined benefits where everything's matching despite what the stock market does and the rate of returns on all these investments, which, by the way, CalPERS is, last I heard, was investing in China. I'm sure that's a very solid investment. But so what do you think being fiscal conservative is?
Well, I think it's asking difficult questions to all the county departments. It's reviewing the budget and not just rubber stamping it. It's going line by line, and it's saying, hey, why are you spending $25,000 on a wrought iron fence in the ROV office? Why are the taxpayers funding this? You're blocking us from our own elections and spending our money to make that happen.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. You know, we've been calling for an audit or forensic audit for a long time. I don't understand why the county hasn't done that, because everybody's talking about how much money you spend, and you're spending here and there. How do you know what's going where or what if you don't look at it?
Well,
instead of just rubber stamping.
My experience in government, which is pretty extensive, I worked for the city of San Mateo. I worked for Cal Fire. It was used Cal. I forget what it used to be called. California Department of Forestry. That's way back in the day when I worked there, and the Army. All of this. So when I hear that. Most of the time, my experience has been that departments get rewarded for overspending as opposed to getting rewarded for saving money. And I'd like to see, I'd like to see how that would be changed because, at one of the board meetings, I saw that, Patrick Jones, by not taking a salary and not taking, some benefits, saved like $500,000, and nobody cared. He didn't get applause. So I'd like to see some incentives for departments showing how they could save money as opposed to spend it. What do you think?
I absolutely agree, and I think the forensic audit would enable us to do that and not just look at the financial aspect, but also the efficiency, So what are you getting? What's the bang for the buck there, know? And is this money being used wisely? And what's the product we're getting out of it?
Well, if I have somebody who works for me and they don't produce anything, it's a measurable thing.
Yeah.
Because you can usually see it. I think that gets hidden in a lot of these departments.
Well, in the government, it kind of works the opposite in a lot of their budgets. If they don't spend that money, they don't get as much next year.
Right.
So they're just spending it.
There's no incentive.
Why should they?
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, when I worked for the Forest Service when I was 14, I watched them actually bury supplies so that it would not be reflected in their budget. Like that. I mean, I'm
our dad said that about the education system, about the books. How they would dig a big hole and then just bury all last year's books and cover them up that they would.
I'm not saying that's happening here, but what I'm saying is that incentive to not reduce spending has been there for a long time.
Yeah. And I think we need to kind of, as citizens, look at our government differently. We need to not just, look at what services they're giving us, but we have to understand that they are serving us. They're serving at the will of the people, the consent of the governed. And when they, when the bureaucrats get emboldened, by their authority and, empowered also by these budgets and don't have accountability to the people, then that's when you have an unbalanced system.
Right.
Well, and transparency,
I was going to say, I remember some of the government officials in this county saying, the only way you get good police officers or whatever is you've got to pay them, like they live in San Francisco. And that's not true. That doesn't make a person a good person or good at their job just because you pay them more money. Like you say, what's the bang for the buck there?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we need to source from within our county more. We don't need outsiders that come in, grossing this big salary, telling us how to do things. We have plenty of skilled and talented people here within Shasta that could use a salary, a decent salary, not a highly inflated salary.
Well, I heard another program you're on with Terry, and you talked about the urban pay scale and the pay scale. You showed the population density in the different areas. I'd like to talk about that a little bit as well. But
about the suburban and the rural,
right, and also that that if you get elected, you're going into a meat grinder, right? You know that, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be fun down there because there's so much agitation across the board.
But we do have a caller on the line. We've got Arthur on the line. Are you there? Good morning.
Morning.
You're on. You have a question or comment?
Yeah, I did have a question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Good to go.
Yeah, I did have a question.
Okay, go.
It's kind of like, day one of the president.
You're breaking up, Arthur. You're breaking up, Arthur. Maybe call back on another line
there?
or something. You're not getting through.
I'm here now.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So, just like on day one of the president, he gets to go in there and write some different policies, presidential policies. We have to be really strategic about what happens when our guys get in. So my question is, if we were able to do an audit and find out what pots of money we could actually change, then we could make some big changes. Do you know if there's any pots of money out there that aren't allocated that we have to spend that we could divert to something else?
Unallocated funds, not that I know of. As a citizen witnessing the budget hearings, they don't give you all of the figures, so you're just kind of given generalities, and each time basically what they did last year is they said, well, here's what we spent last year, this is what we need this year. And it wasn't line items, so it wasn't, we need this much for that and this much for that. It was sum totals. So as far as unallocated funds, I don't believe there are any unallocated funds specifically. Do you have something in mind there?
Well, going through all these budgets on the school boards, and we've found out in Gateway there's some like $19,000 a month they were spending on a service that no one ever used for several years. So it's kind of those things that we'll have to go through with that fiscal audit to see, are we having funds that are allocated for a service that we aren't using and that, no one's actually.
Yep, that's a very good example, and I think we need that's what the forensic audit would yield is, what are our allocated funds that aren't producing a product?
Right, yeah, so I think that's, our supervisors really need to hone in on that stuff and study, and I know on our school board, at least mine, there's several people that don't actually read the agenda, and several people I would imagine might not read the agenda going into city council and the supervisor. So we need people that are actually going to put in the work and find that kind of stuff so that we could actually benefit in Shasta County.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. Sometimes those packets, the agenda packets that the supervisors get are hundreds of pages long.
And you don't get them in a timely fashion.
Yeah,
it's
a few days before.
A few days before, you don't even have time to read them. It's kind of like the Nancy Pelosi package where, you have to read it, or you have to pass it to find it, what's in it,
Exactly.
And we need to figure out a way to rectify that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably the best way to do it is increasing how many meetings you have, because their thing is saying that they have to pack everything in there, but if you're only meeting twice a month, just increase it to every Tuesday, and then you only have half of it to read.
I think they've already I think they've already increased the amount of meetings that we were having from prior the election before we got Jones and Kevin and Chris. So maybe we should increase that even more. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're probably one of them or all of them are listening.
Oh yeah, and it takes a lot more because the board president or chair is going to have to go down and meet with the staff and comb over data and put all that stuff on the agenda so you can vote it on Tuesday. But it'd be more manageable if you only had to read 250 pages instead of 500.
Right.
Yeah, well, you're on the school board, the SCOE board, right? And that only meets once a month. So I can see how, especially in your case, it's even a more exaggerated situation where you have a lot more to process, a lot more to do in one day. Am I right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, we meet twice a year to go over $100 million budget.
Wow.
And, they give us a week before and then a meeting before the meeting to comb over that data. But, when you're spending $100 million a year, you think that you'd probably meet a little bit more frequently to discuss such matters.
So
one would think.
So is staffing doing all of the calculations and all of the putting the budget together?
Yes, every board, the staff, and that's when you talk about bureaucracy, but you have unelected staff that are putting together all these things. And, they're great people and they're working hard and they have a job to do, so they want to do it well. But everything that you get brought forth to you is from the staff report. And then that is curated by the board president and your superintendent at the school board, and at the county it would be curated by whoever your board chair is and the CEO. So you really have to have people in positions of authority that are on your side that want the same vision as you do if you're going to make great changes.
Well, listen, I want to go ahead. We got, we're half an hour in almost, and we still got quite a bit more of
topics we want to cover.
But we do appreciate your call, Arthur. It was very enlightening.
Yeah, thank you.
I wanted to let you go on for as much as possible because I think you got a lot of good things to say there.
Thank you. Yeah, you guys have a great day.
You too. Thanks. We appreciate that.
So the next is lockdowns and vaccines. Vaccines. Thank you. A little slip of the tongue there. Mandates. And what are your feelings on those?
I absolutely oppose them in all forms, all shapes, and all forms. I don't support vaccine mandates. I don't support max mandates. I don't support lockdowns of our schools, closing of businesses. I think now we've been through this and we found out it was based on a huge lie. People were deceived, and eventually everyone woke up and saw, it was a big lie. They tricked us, they tricked some people more than others, but basically everyone's wise to it now, and nobody's going to fall for it again.
Well, the old saying is that if the government can take your rights away during an emergency, we're going to have a lot of emergencies.
Exactly.
Well, at first people didn't know, especially the elderly, and then they got, exposed more and more. So one of your other issues is homelessness. And I heard part of what you said in the other program about that. But can you tell me exactly what you meant by that, by using the, code enforcement that's already on the books and stuff like that, how that would work?
Yeah, exactly. Well, a lot of it within the city of Reading would be the RPD, but also the countywide would be the sheriff's jurisdiction and the jurisdiction of the Board of Supervisor. For that, we need to know, are our laws that we've already decided upon being enforced properly as far as it relates to homelessness? So it's public camping, loitering, drunk in public, those type of ordinances that we decided a long time ago that we held as important in our community. Are these still being enforced properly? Right. And you can see a big difference in cities when they do decide to enforce these laws, like what happened in San Francisco not that long ago. Governor Newsom.
All you have to do is be the Chinese dictator, and you can go in and everything's cleaned up. It's magic.
Well, it's kind of interesting you say that, because I was told that some of the areas where the homeless people are, let's say, for example, like on I-5, that the Board of Supervisors and stuff are told, just leave them there. You just let them be. You're not supposed to do anything. And it's like, really?
No.
Well, there's got to be some kind of law or whatever that they shouldn't be able to do it. But for whoever to be telling people, no, just leave them there. What's the problem? Just let them be.
There has to be some kind of
No, that's not right. And I think it's probably higher up in the organization. I would want to investigate that and find out where the orders are coming from on that.
Well, what about Charter County? I mean, what do you think about that?
I think it's a great idea. And as long as we have the board majority, it could be done in our favor. But if the board majority shifts, it could also take away our rights. So we have to be very clear and careful how we proceed. I think if you put it before the voters to vote upon, that's the safest and best way to move forward. But we need to have more strong local ordinances specifically about election issues. And for instance, we could put in a local ordinance that the ROV, she cannot preside over her own election, so she would have to recuse herself. Something like that, which would then bolster our ability to choose and elect our government officials.
Are you for hand counting? You listened to the last segment that we have with Dr. Frank. What do you think about
the machines or not?
Exactly. What do you think about
I think we need to do hand counting 100%. And I don't trust the machines at all. And I'm saying that about all the different vendors. They're all, as far as what we're seeing with the cast vote record data, they all show evidence of fraud across the board. So there's not one good machine. And actually, a lot of them use the same software. So a lot of the proprietary software that we're not allowed to witness or see originated from the same source.
It's just interesting.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's interesting.
I never thought about that. But yeah, so the makeup of it is all coming from the same place. So what difference does it matter what your machine, whether it says heart or, I mean, it's like,
Dominion,
Dominion or whatever. It could say anything on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter as long as the software is coming from where, and they have control.
Well, it's just interesting that you can't get in and examine the machines. You can't examine anything. Well, and like I heard the Dr. Frank say last night, the Tina Peters case back there in Colorado, where all she did was make a copy of the machines, the hard drives, and basically preserve all of that evidence, and then she is almost arrested immediately. I mean, how does that even reconcile into a constitutional republic with open and fair elections?
Yeah, she was doing her duty by law to preserve the election records and not destroy them before the 2 years were over, and they're persecuting her for it, and that's completely wrong.
It was interesting. Nobody knew how to preserve it, and then they railroad her, quote unquote, for doing it when she's supposed to do it, and nobody knew how to do it.
Isn't that interesting, though, that we've kind of had the same situation here where the voting records have been destroyed or you don't have access to them? Isn't that what's happened here? Only there was no copying of it because our Clementine person here, the knitter-in-chief, didn't want to allow any of that to happen, which just, come on, that reeks of something rotten in Denmark, doesn't it?
Exactly. If you have nothing to hide, you hide nothing. And our ROV has a lot to hide, and she's very careful about what she releases. And basically, my experience as an election observer in this most recent election, November 7th, the school board, was that they wanted to have very, very minimal information shared with election observers. So we were basically not allowed to be in the room where the actual procedures were taking place. But
aren't legally you're supposed to be allowed in the room? Aren't you legally supposed to be able to observe?
Yeah, it says Section Code 15201 says you're allowed to see the ballots and the signatures thereon. But she put up like a camera monitor, and we were watching through the screen. We weren't allowed to challenge any ballots, which is not true. She said if you wanted to challenge a ballot, you had to take her to court. It was crazy. And the biggest thing that I witnessed in this most recent election that I want to tell people about is that there was a broken chain of custody. So chain of custody is a way of preserving evidence for court to examine, and you have to count the ballots. It's like counting cash in a cash box, and you lock it, and then you sign off with the date.
And legally, they're supposed to keep the chain of custody intact, right?
Yeah, and so they had no chain of custody. After it left the warehouse, it went up to the blue room. The blue room, they opened the ballots, removed them from the envelope, set them on an open-air shelf, no container box or bin, no chain of custody whatsoever. They didn't count them and have an accounting of how many were in that stack. And then from that point on, they went to the Bat Cave, and in both places, they had no chain of custody.
So let's say that we gave them the benefit of the doubt and said that nothing was wrong with this election. But the fact that the procedures are not being adhered to and they're not following the law to keep the chain of custody, even if that election itself was not rigged, which I'm not saying it wasn't rigged because I don't believe that anything's not rigged at this point. But let's say it wasn't. Just the fact that they're using that procedure and not following the law makes it vulnerable to cheating, doesn't it?
Exactly. So that's something we need to be really careful about, and that's why it has to be a transparent election from beginning to end. Citizens need to go out there and observe for themselves, see with their own eyes what's happening, and then they'll know that what she's doing is not right.
And that's not a Republican or a Democrat issue. That should be an issue of that, hey, I guess as long as your side's winning, it's okay, right?
Yeah.
And it seems like the more that people get engaged and want to observe more, she's like choking it down more and more, making it harder and harder for it to be transparent.
Yeah, well, at first it was 6 feet for COVID, and now they want to do 6 feet for...
That's what Marxists do.
Yeah. They want to separate us, and they call us names like... I watched the SEER Summit back in January, and they use names like insurrectionists, election deniers, I think the word Kathy used was election skeptics, so that they have all kinds of ways of labeling us, and kind of considering us the enemy, and we just want fair and transparent elections.
Yeah, because the thing is, that's how you discredit anybody who disagrees with you. And they've been doing it for years. I mean, we were AstroTurf when the whole Tea Party thing started because we were discredited. But the worm is turning, and people are not listening as much as they used to, because after you find out you've been lied to about everything over and over and over again, you come to the conclusion that most of these people are liars.
Exactly.
We got a couple of callers.
All right,
I
let's go to the
believe
callers.
the first one is Jose. No, Joe?
Joseph, yeah.
Joseph.
There you
I'm
go.
sorry.
Perfect.
I wasn't reading the board right. Joseph,
I'm sorry.
how are you? No, you're fine. What can we do for
That's
you,
all right.
Joseph?
Well, it's okay that my dad used to call me Jose. So, well, you know what? I'm really concerned about the fact that we're losing the secret ballot. I just voted in the special gateway election, and when the ballot came in the mail, it had a barcode on it. And that was disturbing to me. So, I took it down, and I like to vote in person anyway. So I surrendered that. They gave me a ballot. I walked over, and you fill it out, and then you put it in this little blue envelope, and you walk over, you hand it to somebody who opens it up, looks at it, see who you voted for, and then sticks it in whatever basket, depending upon who you voted for. And it was just incredible to me. First off, so I'd like anybody else have that situation, and what can we do about that?
Well, I don't remember going into a basket or anything. I do remember having to surrender my ballot and mark a new one, and I do believe I put it in the machine. But yeah, I'm with you about the surrendering of the ballot.
Right. Well, there was no machine for the special election. I thought I would put it into a machine. I actually asked about that. And they said, oh, no, we carry that over next door. We're going to put it in the machines over there. So it didn't get put into a basket in this last election. And like I said, so it had a barcode on the ballot that you got in the mail. And so they could see who you were that was voting. And then it didn't get put into, I didn't put it into a machine. It got put into a basket. And then they said they were taking it over to another machine or to another building where they were going to put it into the machine.
I'm curious about your testimony. Right now we're collecting declarations from people that feel like their rights were violated during the election. And if that is in fact the case, where they opened up your ballot and did not give you the secrecy that you deserved, you need to write a declaration stating the time and the date and what happened. And we're going to collect those and give them to the Board of Supervisors and also to the Sheriff's Department in the cases where election laws are violated.
How does he get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can get a hold of me through my website, which is votelaurahobbs.com, LauraHobbs.
All right, very good. Right. I could enter in voter fraud in one day. Everybody votes on the same day, in person, with ballots and your fingerprint.
With an ID.
With an ID, and you put your thumbprint on the ballot, done.
Yep.
It's easy.
I've got one other comment or question. When you segue off, because I already think you're excellent on this issue, the voter fraud. I've had people, though, that have said, well, she's just a one-issue candidate. So when you get off of this, I would really love to hear you say, these are my other top three issues and what I plan to do about them.
Okay, we'll do that, and then so we're going to talk about the Second Amendment, and then we'll go to the top three that she thinks, okay?
Okay.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And with that, we'll go to our second caller. We have Steve on the line. Good morning, Steve. You there?
Hello.
Hello? You're on.
Hello.
Yes, you're on, Steve. Go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to know about the acid canal situation, what Laura knows about that. There's been droughts in the past, and that canal was never dried up. Who's at the bottom of this canal?
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, at the end is the Anderson Cottonwood, but the reason was that their resources were running low, but the huge problem was that the water board decided to sell the remaining resources off. So instead of even bolstering, which is what they should have done, they should have given them more water. They sold what little was left, and that was wrong. I know people were personally affected by that. And I think that should never happen in a county like ours that has so much water resources. And I think since that time, the board that was guilty of doing that has been reconfigured, and there's different people on the board. But I believe those board members are appointed by the Board of Supervisors. So I think we need to do a better job of interviewing the candidates, making sure they're not beholden to someone who's going to, convince them to sell off our water resources. I think that we need to maintain our rights here in Shasta County to have the water that's ours here first before being sold to other parts of the state.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's been droughts in the past, and that canal's never dried up, so there's definitely shenanigans went on there.
Yeah,
but they only allocated way less water for the users than ever happened before.
Right.
I forget what it was, but it was like down to nothing.
I think that actually goes to the state.
The state was the one that said, "Hey, no, you're not going to get your full 70% or whatever it was. We're going to only allow you to have."
But the supervisors could have stepped in at some point.
Well, that's when it comes down to our local sovereignty, and we need, if the state is going to impose on us laws that conflict with our constitutional rights, our God-given rights, then we have to assert ourselves as a county.
Are you willing to fight Sacramento on all these issues?
Absolutely. Bring it on.
All right, very good. We're going to move on, Steve.
All
right. I want to try to cover all the bases here.
Okay.
I want to talk about the Second Amendment.
Yes,
Are you pro Second Amendment?
Absolutely. I'm pro Second Amendment. I think it's based on that we have our very freedom that we have today. I don't think that we would be a free people anymore if we didn't have that. It's not just our personal freedom, but our freedom as the country. But we have the right to keep and bear arms so we can protect ourselves. So our very liberty, our own personal freedom from harm, from attack, from anything. So
what do you think the purpose of the Second Amendment was when it was written?
I think when it was written, well, most people were living in a rural situation. You have to have a gun. You have to be able to protect your family. And you can't just you can't call 911, So that was just foundational in the way of life, and I think it should still be that way today. And if it were, we'd be a lot safer as a community.
Do you think it had anything to do with our government being tyrannical?
Yeah, getting away from the tyrants, the English overlords, and protecting ourselves and our right to exist as a free country.
Well, and that's the thing about the Second Amendment is that it was designed to protect us when our government got out of control. I think that's the biggest purpose of the Second Amendment is to keep our own government from taking over our rights, because historically that's what governments do, is they enslave their population through laws and overreach and everything else. And we're kind of seeing that right now in the big push to get rid of the Second Amendment. So I think it's huge that the Second Amendment protects all the other rights, like you say, but the original intent was our own government was out of control.
Yeah.
So.
All right. So what are your top three? If you had three to pick, what are your top three issues that you want to address?
Well, transparent governance, fair elections, obviously, and no lockdowns, but also the homeless issue, I think, in this area. That's, I think anyone who didn't want to deal with that or look at that at all would be remiss. And I also want to reduce, county regulations and fees, specifically.
Where does crime fit into this?
Well, crime is related, to the homelessness as well, and, drug addicted people that are gonna create crimes in order to support their addictions. And I feel like we need to, enforce the laws already in the books, like I already said. But
very good.
Yeah.
With that, we have a caller. We have Andrew. Good morning, Andrew.
Morning, gang. You know, I don't know if this is off topic or not, but a lot of the problems we have in the state and in the country is politicians violating their oaths of office by not following the Constitution. Is there any way we get the teeth in that to charge them criminally with violating their oaths? And that would solve a lot of our problems if they stuck to our written documents. Our founding document, it's not a living, breathing instrument. It is what we're supposed to live by. And I know, well, actually, by starting here is ground up locally. You know, I'd like to see what we can do locally in our county and through the state and so on. I know it's an open-ended question, but I'd really like to see some teeth put in that to adjudicate these people who violate their oaths.
Exactly. And that's kind of what I was thinking about, too, is we ended that last topic, is that it's not just the criminals on the street that are drug addicted, it's the white-collar crime, and it's the crime of our bureaucrats who are stealing our elections. And I think that all political power is inherent in the people, and this is provided to us in our Declaration of Independence. And it's the governments derive their powers from the consent of the governed, and we need to be more firm in dealing with bureaucrats who are violating oaths of office.
I think we need to put one more word in there. They derive their just powers from the consent of the government. And
there you go.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting, but I think that you know, we've learned a lot of lessons over the last 20 or 30 years, however long you've been involved in these different aspects of the political movement. But we keep coming back to local control.
Yeah, it has to be. That's where the power is.
It has to start at local control. Yeah. Absolutely, no question.
Yeah.
Well, that's why the state's after us in Shasta, because we're contravening their power. Good night. Mayberry Madison, I think it was, in 1812, I believe, anything that is contrary to the Constitution is null and void. That is precedent setting, and why is it not observed and used today?
Well, the problem is you've got court decisions and they're relying on precedent as opposed to the actual document and Constitution that they're supposed to be following. And I think that needs to be changed, and that's going to change when you get enough of a groundswell from the people at every level saying we've had enough, we're not going to do it anymore.
I was going to say more people standing up to that.
Yeah, our elected judges, you know, okay, Dominion voting machine or whatever electronic means they have are putting these people in power. We're stripped of any power because of fraud, and that's what I have to say today. Thank you for the show, and
well, thanks for calling in. We appreciate it.
All right, very good. Thanks, Andrew. So we got about 10 minutes left. I mean, have we covered everything, or do we have any additional stuff that we need to cover? I'm not sure where we're at.
I want to ask, what was the tipping point for you to say, I'm in, I'm doing this, I'm putting everything on hold, and I'm going to run for Board of Supervisor?
Well, honestly, I didn't. At first, I was hoping that someone else would step up and do it. You know, I asked other members of the community that have been activists for a long time, and I wanted them to step forward. But when it was clear that they weren't able to because of family obligations or other political work they were doing in the community or within the state, then I realized there was going to be a void there. And at least with the current candidates at that moment that had already declared, and being a member of District 2 myself, I wanted to have representation. I wanted to have good government, and I didn't feel like the candidates that had so far announced were going to fill those qualifications.
I think that's the benefit and the curse of our form of government, is the fact is it's a citizen government, or supposed to be. And it started out that way, and the citizens have to participate in the government, and if the less they participate, the more out of control that government gets. So it's a blessing and a curse that we control our destiny if we control our destiny, and we need to start controlling our destiny, because if we don't, someone else starts to control our destiny, and we can see that erosion of our freedoms over time. And just the last 30 years, I mean, our lives are completely different than they were 30 years ago when we actually knew what freedom. And the young people coming up, especially the college-educated ones, don't even know what freedom is anymore. They've been so indoctrinated at the schools, and we've seen examples of this because, you know, Harvard and Penn, UPenn or whatever, Penn State, and what's the other one? I can't think of it. But but they've been indoctrinated into Marxism, so they don't understand the responsibility that goes with a free society, which is you have to participate at the local level, and nobody wants to do it. We all want to live our lives, but it's part of the moral society that they talked about, that this was only built for a moral society and was wholly inadequate for anybody else, and that is our blessing and our curse.
Yeah. They don't even question it because they're warm and fuzzy right now. And they don't realize it's not going to last that way.
It's
you know
getting
what?
a lot less fuzzy
yeah,
lately.
but you know what I mean? They don't have to think about it, or it's not quite affecting them yet.
Yeah. And, 2020 opened a lot of people's eyes. When that election got stolen from Trump, people realized that the only way they could affect change was going to be at the local level, because the federal government wasn't going to be there. The state government wasn't going to be there. Nobody was... all these court cases got dismissed because of lack of standing, and, all the things.
Doesn't matter what evidence you have. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, all the governmental things that you would think would protect us, the judicial system and everything else, was not happening. So it became immediate to people, especially in the Patriot movement, that you have to get involved locally. You have to step up and do something. And you can't just sit back and expect, the state to come and do for you, or the
Nor do you
government.
want them.
And you don't want them to either. Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. And even like Dr. Frank said, he started his journey at the top and realized that, it's at the bottom, that we got to go back to the bottom and work our way up and take the power back that we do have.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really crazy, because when you look at everything across the board, talking about the elections and stuff, I'd like to do a reconciliation of the numbers at the federal level, if nothing else, just for fun. How many people voted and how many voters were there actually registered to vote? Look at the numbers, because it doesn't map out.
It's not going to add up there's no way.
Because common sense tells you there's no way. Just by the numbers, looking at who attended the rallies on both sides, it made zero common sense, and what's the old saying, from the outlaw Josie Wells, where he says, you can pee down my back all day long, but quit telling me it's raining, and that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah.
All right, a couple things. We want to mention about the sheriff's case. That is one, that there is an election case here in Shasta County in regards to voter fraud, and the case number is 22SO-35986. Also, need to ask you, will you debate?
Yes,
the
absolutely.
Other people anytime?
On January 4th, there'll be a debate at 6 p.m. Actually, they're calling it a conversation, but it's at 6 p.m. at Shasta Bible College, and it's hosted by the Republican Assembly.
Would you debate someplace else?
Yes, definitely. Okay. If you have one here in the studio, I'd be happy to.
Maybe we could do it on our podcast.
I'm thinking,
Mountaintop Media. Also, on the sheriff's election case, if you've got evidence of voter fraud, if you've got, things that you think were out of character or unusual or didn't follow the rules, whatever the case may be.
Just like Joseph called in about.
Right, disenfranchised when you voted, whatever it is. The election case, the sheriff, you call the sheriff and tell him and give him your story and ask how do you report it. But the case number is 22SO-that's 22SO-35986, 35986. All right.
All right. Do you have any last thoughts or last things that you want to get out there and how to get in contact with you and things like that?
Yeah, I'll be hosting many town halls. They're all listed on my website. I'd like the community to attend and ask me any question. They're open mics, so you can ask whatever you want. It's free format. And my website is votelaurahobbs.com. So LauraHobbs. You can find all my videos where I spoke before the Board of Supervisors, defending Shasta sovereignty, talking about election fraud, talking about the evidence that I uncovered when I analyzed the CVR data. And you can find that all on my website, as well as to donate and contact me directly.
So you've been going to the Board of Supervisor meetings pretty regularly for quite a while.
I had no idea who you are, and I saw you spoke on several occasions, and I thought you were well spoken. I go up there and I make a complete mess out of everything, but I have a tendency to maybe get a little too angry about stuff. But I like what you had to say, and then we met later, and that's how I didn't even know you were running at the time you were speaking.
Yeah, well, this wasn't part of my my long-term plan. I had no plans to be a politician.
So this was Plan B.
Well, we want to appreciate you coming in and talking with us.